The greatest prison we'll ever know is not made of iron or stone. It's built quietly within the mind of a man who never learns to think for himself. Each man walks through life surrounded by the same sun, the same air, the same passage of time. Yet no two men live in the same world. Why? Because reality for each of us is not dictated solely by what is, but by how we see what is. And that vision, clear or clouded, is constructed by the mind. The mind is a silent architect. It lays brick upon brick of belief, expectation, and interpretation. Every thought is a blueprint, every assumption a beam. Over the years, most men come to live inside a house they didn't know they built, one with walls made of limitation, fear, and smallness. They blame the structure, they curse their luck, but they never return to the foundation. Here is a truth most will never stop to examine. Your outer world is a mirror of your inner world. It reflects back not what you hope for, but what you believe. A man who thinks he is capable will find opportunity where others see threat. A man who thinks he is cursed will find confirmation of that belief in every challenge he faces, not because fate is cruel, but because the mind bends perception to fit its mold. Have you noticed how two men can face the same setback, yet one turns it into strength and the other collapses under its weight? The difference is not in the event, it is in the meaning given to the event. And that meaning is chosen, whether consciously or not, by the mind. But here lies the secret. You are not your mind, you are its master, or at least you were meant to be. Most people go through life never realizing this. They become passengers in their own thinking, reacting instead of directing. Their minds become cluttered rooms filled with second-hand opinions, inherited fears, and outdated ideas. They never pause to ask who put these thoughts here. And do they serve me still? It's as if someone handed them a compass, and they never questioned whether it pointed north. To shape your reality with intention, you must begin by becoming aware of the silent architecture of your thoughts. Ask yourself often and honestly, what do I believe about myself and why? What stories have I been telling myself, and are they still true? Am I building a prison or a palace with the bricks of my thinking? Because here's a truth too few are ever told. Your thoughts do not merely describe your world, they create it. If your mind is the architect, then awareness is the hand that sketches the design. Discipline is the tool that shapes it. And choice, the sacred, often unused power of choice, is the key that allows you to redraw the map of your life. But there's something even more powerful behind that, something that shapes even the thoughts themselves. There is a form of slavery that has no chains, no bars, no overseer. It does not shout commands, nor does it march in through the front door. It whispers, quietly, repeatedly, until one day its voice becomes your own. This is the slavery of mental conditioning. From the moment we are born, the mind begins to absorb, not truth, but repetition, not wisdom, but imitation. And like wet cement, the impressions of early voices, parents, teachers, peers, media, leave their mark. Not by force, but by familiarity. Have you ever stopped to wonder, how many of my beliefs are truly mine? How many of my thoughts were chosen, and how many were simply inherited? A man is not born thinking he is small or incapable or undeserving. These are learned conclusions, conditioned over time, and once accepted, they become invisible chains. He walks with them, speaks through them, dreams inside them, but never thinks to question them. This is why so many live below their potential, not because they lack power, but because they've been taught to doubt it. You see, the mind is like a fertile field. Whatever seed is planted and tended to will grow. If fear is planted, fear will flourish. If scarcity is repeated, it becomes the lens through which abundance is missed. And if a man hears long enough that success is for others, he'll stop reaching for it himself. The world doesn't need more intelligence. It needs more awareness. More individuals willing to wake up and see, I am not my conditioning. Because here is the tragedy of unconscious living. The very thoughts that limit you were often planted by people who never achieved what you are capable of. People who played it safe. People who never tested the edges of possibility. And now their limitations echo in your mind as if they were truth. But truth is not what is commonly repeated. Truth is what endures under examination. Ask yourself, when did I stop believing I could? Who told me it was too late, too hard, too far? And more importantly, why did I accept it without a fight? A mind that has been conditioned to stay small must be reconditioned to rise. And that begins not with motivation, but with examination. It begins when a man finally asks, what if I have been living under a false ceiling my whole life? There's a moment, sometimes sudden, often quiet, when a man awakens to the reality that much of what he's believed was never his to begin with. That moment is sacred because it is the beginning of freedom. But freedom alone is not enough. To be free and still stand idle is to waste the gift. There must be something more than breaking the chains. There must be a new direction, one that few ever truly discover. There's a quiet power available to every man at every moment in every place on earth. It costs nothing. It requires no permission. And yet it is one of the rarest forces truly used by humankind. It is the power of intentional thought. Most people do not think, they react, they replay, they ruminate. Their minds are like unattended gardens, overrun with weeds of worry, distraction, and noise. They mistake mental activity for mental direction. But motion is not progress, and thought without purpose is nothing more than noise. Intentional thought is different. It is deliberate. It is focused. It is chosen. Have you ever taken a moment, not a fleeting second, but a still, deliberate moment, to sit quietly and think on purpose? To ask yourself a question with the full expectation that your mind will respond, not with panic, but with clarity? Few have, and that is the secret, because intentional thought requires discipline. It requires solitude. And most of all, it requires responsibility. When a man begins to think for himself, he can no longer blame others for his beliefs. He can no longer say, "They taught me this," or "That's just how I was raised." He must take the reins. And that frightens many. But those who learn to think with intention, those who pause, reflect, examine, and choose their thoughts as a craftsman selects his tools, those men become builders of reality. Let me offer you something to consider. Every advancement in human history, every work of greatness, every solution to every problem began with a single thought, a focused, intentional thought. The bridge was once a thought. The cure, the novel, the invention, the movement. They were all thoughts before they were ever flesh and form. So then, what thoughts are you choosing to dwell upon? A man who does not direct his thinking becomes a servant to whatever noise is loudest, the news, the neighbor, the fear in the room. But a man who chooses to think deliberately becomes a creator. He shapes his hours, his days, his legacy. Here is the irony. The human mind is the most powerful instrument in the known universe. It can calculate the stars, split the atom, design a future, but only if we tell it what to focus on. Most never do. They drift. Their thoughts wander. They live on mental autopilot, guided not by vision but by habit. And so their lives become echoes, repeating patterns, recycled fears, inherited dreams. But for the man who dares to pause, to ask, to seek clarity rather than comfort, a new path opens. He begins to think not of what he is told, but of what is true, not of what is popular, but of what is meaningful. And from that stillness, power is born. But even that power must be protected. For we live in a world full of noise, and the next great danger is subtle, yet ever present. In every age there have been places where men gather, not to think but to echo, to repeat what is already accepted, to nod along safely within the comfort of shared opinion. These are not places of growth but of stagnation. And today, more than ever, they are everywhere. The modern world offers a peculiar illusion, unlimited information, yet very little thought. We are surrounded by voices, some loud, some subtle. They come through screens, headlines, conversations, and trends. And most of them are not offering ideas, they are offering instructions, telling you how to feel, what to believe, who to admire, what to fear. And they do so with such frequency that eventually we begin to confuse the repetition with truth. This is the echo chamber, a room of mirrors that shows you only what you already expect to see. And in that room, the voice of your own mind grows fainter and fainter until one day you realize you have not had a single original thought in weeks, perhaps even years. Have you noticed how rare it is to meet someone who speaks with conviction born of contemplation? Not borrowed certainty, not second-hand slogans, but quiet, rooted clarity, the kind that comes only from time spent in solitude, wrestling honestly with one's own beliefs. To reclaim the authority of your own mind, you must first leave the noise. That doesn't mean isolation. It means discernment. It means asking, Is this thought truly mine? Is this conclusion the result of reflection or reflex? Have I examined this or merely accepted it? The man who does not pause to question will soon find himself thinking in phrases he did not write, dreaming dreams that are not his, and fearing outcomes that were never his to fear. But there is a way out. Step one is silence, not absence of sound, but silence from reaction, that sacred pause between stimulus and response where the thinking man lives. Step two is solitude, not loneliness, but the noble act of withdrawing to listen to your own soul, unfiltered. And step three is courage, because to think for yourself truly is to risk standing alone. It is to risk being misunderstood, misquoted, even mocked. But the alternative is to live a life that belongs to everyone but you. You must decide whose voice will be the compass of your life. Will it be the crowd, the critic, the algorithm, or will it be your own? Because here's what most never realize. The crowd does not reward clarity. It rewards conformity. But clarity is what builds legacies. And the moment you reclaim your mind from the noise, you become dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to mediocrity, to fear, to control, to every lie that kept you small. But even then, there's one more secret that remains hidden from most. A final truth that, if misunderstood, can turn even the sharpest mind into a silent saboteur. There is a peculiar tragedy in the human story, one that plays out quietly in millions of lives each day. A man is born with a mind, the finest tool, the most powerful instrument, the greatest servant he will ever possess. But over time, he forgets his role. He forgets who is master, and the servant takes over. You see, the mind was never meant to rule. It was meant to obey, to serve a purpose higher than itself, to carry out the will of the soul, the vision of the heart, the direction of the spirit. But when the master forgets to lead, the servant begins to dominate. This is how anxiety grows, how doubt festers, how a man becomes imprisoned by his own inner voice, because the mind, left unchecked, does not drift toward peace, it drifts toward survival, toward fear, toward the small and the safe. Not because it is cruel, but because it is mechanical. It follows its last instruction. So the man who fails to lead his mind becomes subject to its impulses. He begins to believe that every fear is a warning, every worry is wisdom, every passing thought is a prophecy. But thoughts are not facts. They are possibilities. And unless you choose which ones to water, your life becomes a field overgrown with what was never meant to grow. Think of your mind as a stallion, strong, swift, wild. It can carry you to great heights if you hold the reins, but if you let it run without direction, it will trample your dreams beneath its hooves. Ask yourself now, who is leading whom? When you wake up in the morning, do your thoughts serve your vision, or do they pull you in 10 directions before your feet hit the floor? When you set a goal, do your thoughts build the bridge, or do they point out every reason to turn back? The rare secret is this. Your mind will believe what you tell it if you speak with consistency and authority. Most men whisper their dreams and shout their fears, and the mind, faithful servant that it is, simply obeys the loudest voice. You must be that voice. Train your mind as you would train an apprentice. Speak to it clearly, direct it daily, correct it when it strays, praise it when it serves, but never forget it is not you. You are the one behind the thoughts, the observer, the architect, the master. If there's one thought I'd leave with you today, it's this. You are not at the mercy of your mind. You are its maker, its guide, and its steward. And the life you live tomorrow will be shaped by the thoughts you choose to plant today. Think about that the next time you're alone with your thoughts.